Hi, in OET Speaking, clinical communication criteria is one of the two broad aspects based on which the examiner evaluates a candidate's performance. Now, in clinical communication criteria, there are 5 assessment factors, and the first on the list is relationship building. Very often, students are not aware of this assessment criterion, which is relationship building. And if at all the student is aware of this concept, they consider relationship building to just initiating the conversation. But what you need to understand is relationship building is way beyond just initiating the conversation. It is how you establish a relation with the patient and you showcase that throughout the conversation. So in this video, I'm going to discuss in detail what relationship building is and how you can apply it practically when it comes to your speaking, because we're going to see real scenarios in OET speaking and how relationship building can be developed. So first, let me tell you about relationship building. I told you it's one of the 5 aspects under clinical communication criteria. And in relationship building itself, you have 4 different aspects. The first is how you initiate the interaction. That is greetings, introduction, and nature of interview. Now, greeting could be anything like good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or it could also be a hi or a hello. You could also use the patient's name to begin the conversation. Like I could say, hello Mr. John, how are you doing today? Now, all of these are different ways in which you can greet the patient. Introduction. Depending on whether you know the patient or the patient is completely new to you, you might have to require to introduce yourself, that is your name and your job responsibility. Now, if it is a patient who is known to you, you will still have to introduce your reason for visit. For instance, I can say, if it is to an unknown patient, I can introduce myself as, good morning, I'm Sangeeta and I'll be the nurse on duty today. Or if it's a known patient, I have to introduce my reason for visit, wherein I can begin as, good morning Mr. John, I'm here today to monitor your blood sugar level. So shall we go ahead with the procedure? So this is when I introduce my reason for visit. So we have greetings, we have introduction and nature of interview. Nature of interview completely depends on how you begin the conversation, which means whether you know the patient or the patient is new to you, accordingly you're going to develop your entire conversation. And you have to maintain that rapport you have with the patient through the entire 5-minute conversation that you have with the patient. So this is initiating the conversation. The second aspect under relationship building is demonstrating attentive and respectful approach. Now, attentive simply means that you're paying attention to your patient. If you have to pay attention to your patient, that also implies that you need to allow the patient to speak. Now remember, OET speaking should not be a monologue. It has to be a conversation wherein you, the nurse, and the patient has enough opportunity to speak. Let's say 50% of the conversation should be by the patient itself. Only then can you show attentive behavior. At the same time, your approach should also be respectful. Now, what do you mean by attentive? It means you're allowing the patient to speak. And if you notice certain situations where the patient might be embarrassed or not ready to talk about, you should understand their concern there and show respect towards their decision. Or it could also be if they are unable to explain certain things or talk about a certain condition, you need to respect that as well. So being attentive and respectful are both equally important. Number 3 is adopting a non-judgmental approach. So what is a non-judgmental approach? Of course, at times when you talk to your patient, you might listen to certain things that the patient shares that you might feel is not right. You have no right to comment on such things. For instance, when you talk to the patient and you find out that the patient smokes 5 packets of cigarettes a day, you cannot say, "Oh my God, 5 packets of cigarettes, that's insane." That's being judgmental. You're here to collect information about the patient and to get a detailed idea about his or her habits, and you're not here to judge anyone. Now, you're no one to say that smoking 5 packets of cigarette is a great sin, and that shouldn't be showcased as you speak. So, if at all you feel that smoking 5 packets of cigarettes is a lot, you still cannot comment that way. Now, there is an exception. Now, let's say the patient is here to talk to you and to find and seek help in reducing the smoking habit, and if he conveys the idea that he smokes 5 packets of cigarettes a day, then probably you could use it to talk to him about how he can reduce smoking by saying, so Mr. John, smoking 5 packets of cigarettes is not a good thing, so probably we can start by reducing the number of cigarettes you smoke in a day. You're trying to use the information that he's just given, but at the same time you're being non-judgmental, but you're also using this information to try and aid the patient in helping him reduce his smoking. The fourth and the last aspect under relationship building is showing empathy. If you find instances where the patient is unwilling to divulge certain information or they feel insecure about speaking something, you need to understand that. You need to show empathy. Now, probably they're going through a tough time. They might have enlisted themselves for a donor and not yet able to find one. Now, you need to empathize with that situation. Or probably they don't have the right support from their family and they're facing a lot of problems just because of that. So that's where you will need to showcase empathy. So these are the various aspects that are tested under relationship building. Now let's get to the practical side of it. I'm going to show you real time how you can establish relationship building in your conversation. And this is especially in areas where you begin the conversation, in certain instances in between a conversation. So let's find out what we can do real time to showcase relationship building. Setting number 1, accident and emergency. You are an accident and emergency nurse. So there is this patient who has presented himself at 3 a.m. He states his name to be Joseph Groom. He has had a head injury, has a mild concussion, his clothes are torn, his body has bruises, it's bleeding, his right hand is swollen, and he is looking for pain relief medication while waiting for the doctor to come and see him. The first task on your role play card says, ask about what happened. If this is the setting and the background information, how will you begin your conversation? Here is an example. Now remember, the setting here is an accident and emergency, and we have some details about the patient, and the first task says, ask about what happened. Now many students might think of beginning by introducing him or herself first and then directly ask the question as to what happened. For example, they might say, "Hi, my name is Sangeeta. I'm one of the nurses in this accident and emergency. Can you please tell me what really happened?" Now, can we start in any other way than just directly based on the task? Think of it as a real situation here. I have a patient in my accident and emergency. I can see on observation that he has cuts and bruises all over his body. How am I going to use this background information to introduce my conversation? We know when it comes to relationship building, we have to focus on greeting the patient, on introduction, and the entire nature of our interview to begin with. So, let's keep that in mind and see a sample of how you can begin the conversation. For the entire video, download Medcity OET app, available on Play Store and App Store.